In the small, unforgiving town where whispers carried more weight than truth, Igor found himself cornered by fate and betrayal. Accused of a crime he never committed, stealing from the very people he had once called neighbors, he became an outcast overnight. The entire town turned against him, their eyes filled with hatred, as if they saw not a man but a monster. His name was dragged through the mud, his reputation shattered like glass underfoot. Desperation clawed at his chest as he realized there was no one left to trust, no safe haven in this place that had been his home for years. One frigid night, with the wind howling like a banshee in shadows, stretching long across the desolate streets, Igor fled into the darkness. Each step echoed in the silence, a reminder of the life he was leaving behind. Tears streamed down his face as he thought of Artyom, his young son, who would grow up without a father. He could still hear Artyom's voice calling out for him, pleading for answers he couldn't give. It tore him apart to abandon his family, yet staying meant certain capture or worse, death at the hands of those who sought vengeance rather than justice. But the nightmare didn't end there. Hidden within the chaos of lies and deceit was a single, fragile thread holding the truth together. This recording wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon, coveted by those who wanted to bury the past forever. Ilya, the manipulative mastermind pulling strings from behind the scenes, and Vadim, his ruthless accomplice, were desperate to get their hands on it. They weren't alone. Mysterious figures lurked in the shadows, ready to strike down anyone foolish enough to possess the tape. Its contents held secrets so explosive that they threatened to unravel everything: alliances, reputations, and even lives. For Igor, the tape was both a lifeline and a curse, a chance to clear his name, but also a target painted squarely on his back. Ilya was a man who thrived in the shadows, pulling strings with ruthless precision to ensure his empire remained untouchable. His ambition knew no bounds, and neither did his cruelty. When Tatiana discovered that her husband had hired a hitman to eliminate Maxim, the only person who could expose the truth behind Igor's framing her world, crumbled beneath her feet. The realization struck her like a freight train. The man she had shared 17 years of her life with was capable of unimaginable evil. Ilya's actions weren't just calculated. They were cold-blooded. He didn't care about collateral damage, not even his own family. To him, Tatiana and Sonia were pawns in a larger game, expendable if necessary. Tatiana tried to leave, but Ilya wasn't going to let her go without a fight. In an act of sheer control, he changed the locks on their home, effectively locking her out. She stood there, trembling, as she realized she couldn't reach Sonia anymore. Every phone call went unanswered, every text ignored. Her daughter, her precious little girl, was now trapped under Ilya's iron grip. Panic consumed her as she envisioned all the ways Ilya might use Sonia against her. "If your mother doesn't obey me," Ilya had coldly told Sonia one evening, "you'll never see the light again." Those words haunted Tatiana day and night. What kind of monster would threaten their own child? Yet, this was the man she thought she knew, a wolf masquerading as a loving husband and father. Meanwhile, Sonia's dreams were being crushed before her eyes. She had always dreamed of studying in Munich, imagining herself walking through its historic streets, surrounded by culture and knowledge. But Ilya refused to let her leave. Instead, he forced her into remote learning, isolating her from the outside world. Sonia pleaded with him, tears streaming down her face, begging for a chance at the future she deserved. But Ilya's heart was made of stone. He stared at her with icy indifference, repeating his chilling mantra, "Your education depends on your mother's obedience." Each word felt like a dagger piercing Sonia's soul. She loved her father, or at least the memory of the man he used to be, but now she saw him for what he truly was, a tyrant willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way. Elia, too, bore the weight of Ilya's wrath. Haunted by memories of Igor, the man she once loved but failed to save, she carried guilt like a leaden cloak. She knew too much, and Ilya and Vadim made sure she understood the consequences of speaking out. Late one night, as rain lashed against her windows, Ilya received a menacing message: "Talk, and you die." It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. Fear clung to her like a second skin, suffocating her with every breath. Yet, despite the danger, she couldn't stay silent. The tape held the key to everything: Igor's innocence, Ilya's treachery, and the truth that could set them all free or bury them deeper. Ilya wrestled with her conscience, knowing that revealing the contents of the tape could cost her life. But how could she live with herself if she didn't try? As tensions escalated, the relationships between these characters grew increasingly fraught. Tatiana reached out to Ilya in desperation, hoping to piece together the fragments of the nightmare she found herself in. Together, they uncovered more evidence pointing to Ilya's involvement in Igor's downfall. Maxim's investigation hadn't been shut down quietly. It had been obliterated, along with any hope of justice. Documents were destroyed, witnesses silenced, and lives ruined. Ilya's web of deceit stretched far beyond what either woman had imagined. And yet, amid the chaos, a flicker of determination ignited within them. They vowed to fight back, no matter the cost. But fighting Ilya was like staring into the abyss. It stared right back, darker and more dangerous than ever. As Tatiana prepared to file for divorce, she knew the battle ahead would be brutal. Ilya wouldn't surrender easily, not when so much was at stake. For Tatiana, it wasn't just about freedom anymore, it was about protecting Sonia, exposing the truth and reclaiming the shattered pieces of her humanity. And for Ilya, it was about redemption for Igor and for herself. The tape, fragile, unassuming, yet brimming with explosive truths, was more than just a recording of Igor and Ilya's final conversation. It detailed Ilya and Vadim's sinister plan to frame Igor for theft, unraveling the intricate web of deceit they had woven over months. Every word on that tape was like a shard of glass aimed directly at Ilya's carefully constructed empire. If it were made public, not only would Igor be vindicated, but Ilya's reputation would crumble into dust. The weight of what was at stake pressed down on everyone involved, turning their lives into a high-stakes game where betrayal and danger lurked around every corner. Maxim, once an investigator with access to all the evidence tying Ilya to the conspiracy, became a target when he refused to hand over the tape. Late one night, as rain poured in torrents, shadowy figures ambushed him outside his apartment. They came without warning, their intentions clear: retrieve the tape or silence him permanently. Maxim fought back with desperate ferocity, his fists colliding with flesh and bone, but he was outnumbered. Blood streamed from a gash above his eyebrow as he stumbled backward, clutching the small device tightly against his chest. "You'll never get this," he shouted hoarsely, defiance blazing in his eyes even as blows rained down upon him. Though battered and bruised, Maxim managed to escape, disappearing into the labyrinthine alleys of the city. But the message was loud and clear. The tape had become a death warrant for anyone who possessed it. Meanwhile, Tatiana found herself trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Ilya, driven by paranoia and rage, confronted her in a chilling scene that left her trembling with fear. He burst into her hotel room unannounced, his face contorted with fury, a knife gleaming menacingly in his hand. "Where is it?" he demanded, his voice low and venomous. Tatiana backed away, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. She could see the madness flickering in his eyes, the same man she had shared a life with now transformed into a monster. "I don't have it," she lied, her voice barely above a whisper. Ilya took a step closer, pressing the blade against her throat. "Don't play games with me," he snarled. "Give me the tape, or I swear to God, I'll make sure you regret it." Tatiana's mind raced, memories of Sonia flashing before her eyes. Would Ilya really go so far? Could he harm her, the mother of his child? The uncertainty paralyzed her, but she knew one thing for certain. Giving him the tape meant sealing Igor's fate and perhaps hers as well. Summoning every ounce of courage, she spat back, "You've already taken everything from me. What more do you want?" Ilya's grip tightened, the cold steel biting into her skin. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, the air thick with tension. Then, unexpectedly, he lowered the knife, his expression shifting from rage to icy calculation. "This isn't over," he growled before storming out, leaving Tatiana gasping for breath, her body shaking uncontrollably. As the battle for the tape intensified, alliances fractured and trust dissolved into thin air. Elia, burdened by guilt and fear, tried to stay hidden, knowing full well that both Elia and Vadim would stop at nothing to retrieve the damning evidence. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that the truth needed to come out, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Igor's absence loomed large over them all, a reminder of the injustice that had been done. The tape wasn't just a piece of evidence. It was a symbol of hope, a fragile thread holding together the possibility of redemption and justice. But as each character grappled with their role in this deadly game, one thing became painfully clear. Whoever controlled the tape held the power to destroy or save them all. The night the guest house burned down was a turning point that no one saw coming. Dennis, consumed by rage and alcohol, acted on impulse, setting fire to Tatiana's property in an attempt to lash out at Ilya, though his actions had far more devastating consequences than he intended. Flames erupted like a living beast, devouring everything in their path. Inside, Katya and Artyom were trapped, coughing violently as smoke filled the air. The heat was unbearable, the walls groaning under the inferno's fury. In a moment of sheer desperation, Artyom wrapped his arms around Katya, shielding her from falling debris as they stumbled through the chaos toward the exit. With flames licking at their heels, they burst into the cold night air just seconds before the roof collapsed behind them. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, a blur of terror, adrenaline, and survival. Tatiana arrived shortly after, her heart stopping when she saw the charred remains of what had once been a safe haven. Her relief at finding Katya and Artyom alive quickly turned to horror as the gravity of the situation sank in. This wasn't just vandalism. It was an act of war against her family. And though Dennis later admitted his role in the arson, claiming it was meant to punish Ilya, the damage was done. The scars left by the fire ran deeper than anyone could have anticipated, not just physical, but emotional wounds that would take years to heal. Meanwhile, Tatiana's decision to divorce Ilya only fueled his wrath. Unable to accept defeat, Ilya embarked on a calculated campaign to destroy her reputation. He hired private investigators to follow her every move, capturing photos of her at the old stagecoach hell and leaking them to local tabloids. Headlines screamed accusations of infidelity, painting Tatiana as a selfish woman abandoning her family for reckless indulgence. Strangers began pointing fingers, whispering cruel judgments wherever she went. Even simple errands became unbearable ordeals as cameras flashed and insults flew. Yet, the worst part was knowing Ilya orchestrated it all, a man who claimed to love her but now sought to crush her spirit entirely. As Tatiana fought to maintain her sanity amidst the storm, she couldn't help but wonder how much lower Ilya would stoop. Would he stop at ruining her life, or would he go so far as to harm Sonia? Every phone call unanswered, every text ignored, felt like another twist of the knife. She was trapped in a psychological battleground, with Ilya pulling the strings from behind the curtain. But even in her darkest moments, Tatiana clung to one truth. She would not let him win. Not this time. Andrei was supposed to be dead, a name buried in old records, a ghost from the past. Yet, against all odds, he had survived, wandering the grimy streets of Kiev like a shadow cast by a forgotten world. His once promising life had been reduced to scraps, sleeping on park benches, begging for coins outside fast food joints, and clutching a tattered jacket as his only shield against the biting cold. But it wasn't just poverty that defined him, it was guilt. The passport stolen years ago under false pretenses had become a weapon wielded by Ilya and Vadim to frame Igor, shattering lives and igniting a chain reaction of tragedy. Andrei didn't know the full extent of the chaos he'd inadvertently caused, but his reappearance sent shockwaves through everyone who crossed his path. When news of Andrei's survival reached Tatiana and Ilya, panic rippled through them. If Andrei spoke, even unknowingly, he could unravel everything Ilya had worked so hard to conceal. For Ilya, this was an existential threat. If Andrei revealed even a fraction of the truth, it would expose not only Igor's innocence, but also the depth of Ilya's corruption. Vadim, too, felt the noose tightening around his neck. He knew that Andrei's existence jeopardized their entire operation, and eliminating him seemed like the only solution. But Andrei wasn't just a victim of circumstance. He held pieces of the puzzle no one else did. Fragments of conversations, half-remembered encounters, and vague recollections of deals made behind bars. All these were locked inside his weary mind. When he finally surfaced near the central bus station, disheveled and desperate, both sides scrambled to find him first. To Tatiana and Ilya, he represented hope, a chance to clear Igor's name and bring justice to those betrayed. To Ilya and Vadim, however, he was a ticking time bomb, a loose end that needed to be silenced permanently. The tension reached its peak when Andrei unexpectedly confronted Ilya in a dimly lit alleyway. "You know what they've done?" he rasped, his voice trembling with equal parts fear and defiance. "Tell me you didn't forget?" Ilya froze, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe he was delusional, but deep down, she knew he wasn't lying. Behind them, headlights pierced the darkness of Adam's men closing in. In that moment, Andrei became both savior and target, carrying secrets that could either save or destroy them all. Artyom had always been the quiet, observant type, but the weight of his father, Igor's unjust framing, transformed him overnight into a young man burdened by responsibility. At just 17, he found himself thrust into a world of danger and deception, determined to uncover the truth that could clear Igor's name. His relentless pursuit of evidence led him to a confrontation with men hired by Ilya men who didn't hesitate to use violence when cornered. In one harrowing incident, Artyom was ambushed in an abandoned warehouse while searching for documents linked to Vadim's fraudulent dealings. A blow to the head left him unconscious, and by the time Katya arrived on the scene, blood pooling beneath him, her screams echoed through the empty space like a mournful wail. The sight of Artyom lying there, broken and vulnerable, shattered something inside her. For days, he remained in a hospital bed, his condition critical, each beep of the heart monitor a reminder of how fragile life truly was. Meanwhile, Rita, Katya's mother, and a woman whose selfishness knew no bounds, saw this tragedy as an opportunity rather than a loss. She stormed into the hospital room, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor, and launched into a tirade about family loyalty. "You're ruining everything." She spat at Katya, pointing an accusatory finger. "Why can't you accept help from people who actually care? Do you think living in some rundown apartment with Artyom will fix your problems?" Her voice rose to a shrill pitch as she leaned closer, her eyes blazing with fury. "If you keep this up, I'll sue you for damaging our reputation. You're throwing away everything we've worked for." Katya clenched her fists, tears streaming down her face, but she refused to back down. "I'm not letting anyone control my life, not you, not them," she shot back, her voice trembling yet resolute. Rita scoffed, shaking her head in disgust before storming out, leaving behind a suffocating tension that lingered long after she was gone. For Katya, watching Artyom fight for his life became both a source of strength and despair. She blamed herself for not stopping him, for not being there when he needed her most. But deep down, she also admired his courage, the way he stood up for what was right despite the odds stacked against him. As they waited anxiously for signs of improvement, their bond grew stronger, forged in the crucible of adversity. Yet the shadow of Rita's threats loomed over them, a constant reminder that the battle wasn't just against external enemies, but also within their own fractured families. Every moment felt like walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from disaster. The alliance between Ilya and Vadim, once unshakable, began to crack under the weight of greed and mistrust. For years, they had worked seamlessly together to cover their tracks, especially after orchestrating the scheme that framed Igor for theft and secured them the lucrative Novi Comfort housing estate deal. However, Vadim's suspicions grew when he stumbled upon discrepancies in the financial records. The sums Ilya claimed were reinvested into other projects didn't match up with what Vadim knew they'd earned. Confronting Ilya became inevitable, but it was a dangerous game. Both men held secrets that could destroy the other. "You think I'm stupid?" Vadim hissed during one heated exchange. "I know how much we made from that estate. Where's my share?" Ilya smirked, his calm demeanor masking the storm brewing beneath. "If you can't trust me now," he said coldly, "then maybe you never should have trusted me at all." Meanwhile, Tatiana's confrontation with Ilya marked a turning point in her transformation from victim to warrior. Fueled by rage and grief, she stormed into his office, slamming the door so hard it rattled the walls. Her eyes burned with fury as she faced him, no longer afraid of the man who had tormented her for years. "You've destroyed everything," she spat, her voice trembling yet fierce. "You took my family, murdered my soul, and now you want to take my daughter too? Is there nothing sacred to you?" Each word hit Ilya like a hammer blow, shattering the illusion of control he desperately clung to. His face contorted with anger, veins bulging in his neck as he lunged toward her. "How dare you speak to me like that?" he roared, sweeping papers off his desk in a fit of uncontrollable rage. Glass shattered as he hurled a vase against the wall, its fragments scattering like the ruins of his crumbling empire. Tatiana stood firm, unflinching even as chaos erupted around her. She saw through his facade, the mask of power and invincibility, and realized just how fragile he truly was. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about vengeance, justice, and reclaiming the pieces of herself he had stolen. As Ilya paced back and forth, muttering threats under his breath, Tatiana felt something awaken within her, a fire that refused to be extinguished. "You'll lose everything," she warned, her tone icy and resolute. "And when you do, don't expect anyone to stand by your side." Unbeknownst to Tatiana, this moment also planted seeds of doubt in Ilya's mind about Vadim's loyalty. If Tatiana knew so much, how long before Vadim discovered the truth? Paranoia crept in, poisoning their partnership further. The cracks widened, threatening to bring down not only their operation but also the lives intertwined with it. Tatiana's decision to divorce Ilya marked the beginning of an uncertain chapter in her life. Though she had made up her mind, the future loomed like a dark cloud over her and Sonia. Every step she took felt like walking on thin ice. Every shadow seemed to belong to one of Ilya's spies. He had eyes everywhere, men lurking near her hotel, strangers tailing her during errands, even whispers slipping through phone lines. "You can't escape me," he once growled in a chilling voicemail. The message replayed in her mind incessantly, a grim reminder that no matter how far she ran, Ilya would always find her. Fear became her constant companion, gnawing at her resolve with each passing day. Would they ever truly be free? Meanwhile, Igor remained a ghost, a name whispered in hushed tones but never seen. Was he alive? Dead? Or somewhere in between, hiding from those who sought to silence him forever? Before vanishing into the abyss, he left behind a final letter for Alia, a poignant farewell filled with raw emotion. "I'm sorry I couldn't stay for our son," it read. "Take care of Artyom for me." Each word was a dagger to the heart, not just for Elia, but for anyone who knew the depth of Agor's sacrifice. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a plea, a desperate hope that his absence wouldn't destroy the people he loved most. Just as despair threatened to consume them all, Andre resurfaced, clutching a USB drive that could change everything. His reappearance was as sudden as it was shocking, a flicker of light in an otherwise suffocating darkness. But fate, cruel and unrelenting, wasn't done playing its games. As Andre staggered toward safety, clutching the device like a lifeline, a group of masked men ambushed him in broad daylight. They dragged him into a van, leaving behind only chaos and unanswered questions. The USB, now missing, became both a beacon of hope and a symbol of peril. It found it could expose Ilya's crimes and vindicate Igor, but if it fell into the wrong hands, it might seal their doom. For Tatiana, Ilya, and Artyom, the stakes had never been higher. Could they trust Andre to hold on to the truth long enough to share it? Or was this another dead end in their relentless pursuit of justice? With time running out and enemies closing in, they clung to the fragile belief that redemption was still possible. Yet, deep down, they knew the battle was far from over and the cost of failure was unthinkable.